Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Half Hour Podcast. I'm Brian, the creator of Half Hour. My goal here is simple, to add real value to your day, to help you learn, to help you lead, and to help you level up in your leadership journey. Whether it's a new perspective, a real-world example, or something you can put into practice right away. To check out my past episodes, go to itshalfhour.blog/podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back, and I'm glad you're here. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. How many times this week have you answered the question, how are you, with the word busy, or in some regard, busy? I know I've said it more than once, and in several different settings, something just rolls off the tongue before I even realize it. It's kind of the easiest mask we wear, right? A quick way to sound important, to keep people from digging a little bit deeper, or to remind ourselves that the chaos we're swimming in is at least serving some sort of purpose, right? But here's the truth. When we say busy as the default answer, we're not actually naming what's real. And that's what I want to talk about today. I recently wrote an article called The Mask of Busyness, and it talks about why busyness has become the armor for so many of us that we hide behind, and what happens when we're brave enough to set it down and to really dig deep into finding out how we're feeling. So if this is interesting to you and you want to keep listening, this one's for you. Thank you so much for stopping by. So if you catch me on a hectic day and you ask how I'm doing, I might say busy, but good. It's sort of this automatic response, I think, that we somehow are programmed to say, especially as stage managers. We're constantly doing things, and we're going here and we're going there, and we're solving problems, and we're talking to a lot of people at the same time. But busy doesn't tell you anything about me. It doesn't say I'm tired. It doesn't say I'm stretched too thin. It doesn't admit that I'm anxious or avoiding something hard. It just says, don't look too closely. I've got this handled. And in a culture that celebrates productivity, busy has become shorthand for worth. Being really busy and, being the last person to stay and the first person to arrive to rehearsals, and, doing all the things, and going to all the meetings, and calling on your day off, and, working really hard is sort of this badge of honor that I think people start to have become accustomed to. So yeah, I think it's just sort of become this automatic thing. So here's the question for you though. When's the last time you caught yourself answering busy without meaning it? What were you covering? Were you just saying you were busy because that's just kind of the accepted response? Or were you trying to hide something behind saying that you were busy? Maybe you were drowning. Maybe you needed help. You needed to ask for help. Maybe you needed a day off. Maybe you were feeling burnt out. So I think it's important to realize and acknowledge what those things are that you're feeling, because the response busy is not always accurate to what is actually going on. So the next thing I want to talk about is not just a response and being able to acknowledge that there is something deeper going on, but that there's a cost to being busy. And busyness feels safe because, like I said, it's this thing that people expect. That they respect it. It's socially rewarded to be busy and to constantly be on your phone and emailing and doing all the tasks, even when it's your day off or when you're on vacation. But that safety comes with a real cost. First of all, it numbs self-awareness, which is sort of what I mentioned before, where you just automatically just say that. You tell yourself that you're being busy because that's what you are supposed to do. That's what you're expected to do. And you stop asking harder questions about, why am I running at this pace? Why are people expecting this from me? Why am I doing this? Do I feel like I have to do this to keep my job, to be respected? and all that sort of stuff. And what is the cost to me physically, to my mental health, to my emotional health? There's all sorts of questions I think that are worth asking when it comes to the cost of busyness. Next, it reshapes our leadership culture. When we participate in this kind of culture and we allow it, and if we model the busyness as something that's normal and expected, then especially as a leader of a team, your team learns that constant busyness and motion is the standard. It is the expectation, and that rest, reflection, slowing down, taking pause isn't safe enough, is not expected, is not something that is something that's not accepted to be able to do. And I think leadership lives in those pauses and in those gaps, and I think those are really important. So yes, while working hard and getting the task done, I think there's a difference between that and being busy. And I feel like people often are busy because that's what they think busy needs to be, is like, getting all the work done, which, yeah. And I think that's a deeper conversation and a whole other, larger conversation that really needs to be had in terms of like the amount of work and the schedule and how big the team is and all that sort of stuff. So the last thing about the cost of busyness is that it limits connection. And I think this is really important because leadership is all about connection, I think, and relationships. So when all I offer is I'm busy in a response, I keep people sort of at an arm's length. I don't really let them in, and I don't really connect with them on a human level. I'm not opening the door for feedback or vulnerability or honesty or being present. I think that it's just like one of those responses, like when someone says, "Hey, how are you?" I'm good. It's very surface level. So here's the danger, is that when busyness is the performance, and presence gets pushed off to the side, and it becomes this automatic sort of thing that we just do instead of being mindful and present and having some sort of awareness around what is happening within ourselves and, how to regulate that. And so I think there's a lot of self-awareness that needs to go on in terms of how to get past this mental idea that being busy equals success and equals being a great stage manager. So now that you're aware of like this busyness idea and that, it can be a shield and a mask to really leading who you are and in your values and just being aware, I think, taking off the mask is really the next step, right? So how do we do this? For me, one practice that has been pretty simple, I think, for getting past this is just naming what I'm feeling. What are the emotions that I'm having? What are the thoughts that I'm having? Might sound like I'm stretched pretty thin right now, but I feel really grateful for this opportunity. Or I'm tired and I need a reset. I think there's a culture that it is shifting. It has been shifting over the past several years, but I still feel like there's opportunity for us to be open about where we are and what we're feeling without feeling shame and judgment and like we're not doing a good enough job because we say I'm tired and I need a day off because I've been working for fucking 55 hours this week. And that's just like the norm. But it shouldn't be the norm. Like that should not be the norm. That is what I'm sort of getting as this idea that being busy and working so many hours becomes this sort of badge of honor that like, oh yeah, like that's just part of the job. And it's like, fuck that. Like that shouldn't be the norm. And I think that is what needs to change. And I know that there's a lot of hurdles to get past that and to make that reality. And a lot of that has to do with money. And I totally acknowledge that. But just saying that there is another way to do things, and the way that we're doing things isn't necessarily the right way. Another practice is by creating micropauses. This is something that I write about sort of like with nuance, but 30 minutes before the show, when everything is really cranking up into the first downbeat and in places, is just take a pause to breathe, ground yourself, put your feet on the ground, close your eyes and just like breathe in for a second and really like get some presence and like center yourself for where you are. Building in those pauses for me, especially when show calling, is a huge help to remember that presence is just as valuable as productivity. You can be super productive, but if you're not present, things are happening around you and you might miss them. And being able to pick up on those things, how someone's feeling, what's going wrong, what's going right, and being able to acknowledge those. And finally, with taking off the mask, curiosity is so important. And when I'm feeling myself putting on this mask of busyness, as I'm calling it, I try to stop and ask, what's really needed here? Like, what am I actually feeling in this moment? Sometimes it's action. Sometimes it's often taking a pause, and it's space, and it's listening sometimes. I've seen whole rehearsal rooms shift when I just let go of that mask. The energy changes, the team breathes easier, presence really takes the lead. So, as you're sort of digesting this for yourself, here's some takeaways. I'm going to start wrapping this up. Busyness isn't the badge of leadership. Presence is. And I know that's sort of like gimmicky, or maybe like sort of like a tagline or something. But, I think that presence really is what can pull you out of that busyness mindset and just really focusing on what am I feeling? And I talked about this in my previous episode about, like feeling your body and your embodied response, and how does that relate to your mental state? And I think that, really taking an inventory of how you're feeling, if you're tired, do you need help? Things like that will be a really big help to start taking that mask of busyness off. So I'll leave you with this question. What masks are you ready to start taking down? If it's busyness or if it's something else, what are some ways that you can start taking that off? Like, what are things that you can put into place? What are these practices that you can start to put into place, like these micropauses that I mentioned, where you just take a moment, 30 seconds, and you just pause and breathe and just like really focus on where you're at today. If you want to go deeper, I did write an article called The Mask of Busyness I mentioned at the beginning. It's on Half Hour. You can check it out on itshalfhour.blog, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, so you can go check that out and take a deeper dive in that. And as always, if you want more stories, or if you want more tools or strategies or things like that, definitely join the Half Hour newsletter. I release that about every other week, and I also try to do a podcast once a month. So if you are interested, please jump on that, and it's super valuable. I'm only really focusing on sending things that add value, because that's really important to me as a leader, and I'm hoping that it will help you learn and to lead and to level up in your leadership journey. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.